You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Former Minister, Liberal Minister Bains, I'm going to follow up on a question put to you by my colleague, Mr. Cooper, where he not only didn't get the question out, but we didn't receive a response. And the question, to refresh your memory, Minister, was, did you take or do you take any former ministerial responsibility for the gross breach of trust and the misuse of almost $400 million of taxpayer money?
As I've indicated, it's important that ministers act in the best interest of Canadians and conduct themselves accordingly.
Minister, do you take responsibility? Under your watch. This was under your watch. Do you take responsibility? Canadians want to know.
Again, I'm answering the question. I keep on getting interrupted. As I've indicated, it's important that I advance what's in Canadians' best interest, and it's important that the policies are set in a manner, and as well.
So the answer is, so thank you. The answer is no. You take no responsibility, which is really a hallmark of the Justin Trudeau government, particularly his ministers, current and former. Now, on the issue of misuse of taxpayer monies, you didn't want to answer the question put to you by Mr. Perkins. Your role at Rogers is one of Chief Corporate Affairs Officer. Under Justin Trudeau's government since 2015, Rogers Communications Canada, one of the largest telco companies in the world, has received a whopping $173,954,991 in taxpayer grants and contributions. So I wish to put that on the record. Now, Mr. Bains, I understand that you were in Ottawa this past weekend.
Mr. Brock, I have a point of order, yes.
Just the relevance of Mr. Brock's statements.
I think he was just reading into the record some numbers, and
it's relevant to Canadians, so I'll move on.
Mr. Brock, you've got 3 minutes.
Now, former Liberal Minister Bains, you were in Ottawa this past Sunday. When did you leave Ottawa?
I left Ottawa yesterday.
Okay, and while you were in Ottawa for approximately 3 days, did you meet with any government officials, elected or non-elected?
Yes, I did.
And who did you meet with?
I met with my former colleagues, Mark Holland, Gary Nandasangri, and Omar Al-Gabra. We were celebrating Mark Holland's 50th birthday.
Okay. Did you meet with any non-elected officials?
I met with the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Katie Telford, and Andrew Bevan.
Okay. And meeting with Katie Telford and Andrew Bevan, did you discuss the content of your testimony today?
No, I did not.
Were you provided any material from Katie Telford or Andrew Bevan or any other non-elected official or elected official to refresh your memory with respect to evidence that you're giving today?
No, I did not receive such information.
This is now your third appearance at this particular committee to discuss your involvement in the SDTC Green Slush Fund. Are you to inform this committee and Canadians that given the passage of time, you were not provided, nor did you seek any material to aid you in the recollection of important details with respect to your failed ministerial responsibilities to SDTC? Is that what you want this committee and Canadians to believe?
If, just to clarify, you're referring to my trip to Ottawa?
I'm talking about through all the times that you've appeared, not just your recent 3-day sojourn in Ottawa. I'm talking about in advance of all of your appearances. Have you not received or have you not sought out material to aid you in your testifying?
No, the information that exists is in the public domain with the Auditor General's report, for example.
We have learned in the past former government officials have been paid with taxpayer dollars to prepare for upcoming committee meetings, even while they were being briefed by government officials. Former Liberal Minister Bains, has the government paid you in any capacity to be here today and the former 2 appearances at this particular committee?
Could you repeat that again?
How much has the government paid you, sir, for your time testifying today, preparing for today, and the other 2 appearances at this committee? How much? Just the number, please.
0.
Thank you. That is the time. And just for the record, I didn't correct this earlier because I know Mr. Bains is aware. This is Mr. Bains' second appearance at this committee. He's also appeared at another parliamentary committee. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Bains, for reappearing today. We received the disturbing report from the Auditor General last June, where she found that the Trudeau government has turned the once legitimate Sustainable Development Technology Canada into a slush fund for Liberal insiders. The Auditor General made it clear that the blame for this scandal falls...
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
I'm just curious, point of clarification. When a member misstates an official document, as he just did, is that to be corrected at some point?
Mr. Erskine-Smith, I'm here to move the meeting along.
Well, perhaps you could read the
there is flourish on both sides, and as I've stated before, a government member will follow Mr. Stewart, and there'll be the right to reply at that point.
So he is allowed to misstate an official document from an official.
Mr. Erskine, this is not a point of order. And on the non-same point of order, yes, Mr. Cooper, I will hear from you.
Yeah, well, just put on the record the complete picture that Ms. Verschaeren said with respect to the minister, that he spoke, to me, as did his policy advisor, and Leah Lawrence said she had talked to Mr. Bains 3 times before she agreed.
Thank you,
and she said he did know that she had a direct conflict.
Your point has been made, which I think is why we're here, why we're doing this study, is that there are many statements out there that contradict one another. Yes, Ms. Khalid, you have the same point of order.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to clarify, because this is actually quite concerning, and more in a broad sense as opposed to the specific topic at hand. Is it okay for members to outright lie or to put misstatements on the record and that cannot be corrected? I mean, like, I can come in here in this committee today and say, hey, the sky is red. And would that be something that would not be corrected?
You are certainly entitled to say that, Ms. Khalid.
I'm not sure why we are...
And Ms. Khalid, that's right. And you'll have the floor right after Mr. Stewart to address any concerns you have about things that have been said previously. But to reiterate, it is your right to say the sky is red. Yes. Mr. Sorry, is this a point of order?
On the same point of order, for Ms. Khalid to impugn the integrity of members of this committee when simply I am reading verbatim from transcripts of committee testimony.
So,
and she says
Ms.
the testimony is lies?
I hear you.
Does she live in an alternate universe?
Mr. Cooper, so Ms. Khalid, it is not helpful to accuse colleagues of lying, but I'm going to hear from you. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you so very much. We do live in the same universe, and I would appreciate if my colleagues across the way would be more truthful in how they frame an issue.
Thank you.
And actually, excuse me?
Thank
you.
Read
the testimony.
Mr. Cooper, you too will have another turn. Ms. Khalid, if you could just conclude it, that's...
You know, Chair, there's no way getting through to them. That's fine.
But again, I appreciate words like untruthful. That's parliamentary. The other word, I would urge all members to avoid that. Mr. Stewart, back to you for just over 4.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Auditor General made it clear, abundantly clear, that the blame for this scandal falls squarely on you as the former Liberal Industry Minister and the current Industry Minister. who did not sufficiently monitor the contracts being given to Liberal insiders. The Auditor General found that the Liberal-appointed SDTC board gave $330 million of taxpayer money to companies where the board members that voted to give out that money had a conflict of interest. In addition, the Auditor General found the same Liberal-appointed board approved another $59 million in projects that were not eligible for funding because they were outside the SDTC Foundation's mandate. The Auditor General said at least 10 of those projects did not even produce green technology or contribute to emission reductions. None whatsoever. Last week, we had a senior official from the Privy Council office, the Prime Minister's own department, testify as we are trying to seek clarity on Annette Verschieren's appointment as chairperson in 2019. The lack of consistency in witness testimony certainly looks like a cover-up at the highest levels of the current government. Ms. Verschieren has testified that she did not apply for the chairperson role, but had been called 2 or 3 times by you, Mr. Bains, in your former role as industry minister, asking her to take the job. Leah Lawrence, president of SDTC, also testified that Minister Bains actually did absolutely call Annette Verschieren twice or multiple times. This was after nearly a year-long selection process had already produced a short list of names for your consideration. But then suddenly Ms. Verschieren's name was suspiciously added, and she was appointed the chairperson on June 19, 2019. We have not been able to find out why the last-minute addition. It certainly was the beginning of the culture of corruption at the Liberals' Green Slush Fund. Ms. Verschieren testified at the Industry Committee on September 16th that she did not apply for the chair position. As I said earlier, she said you approached her 2 or 3 times to take the position of chair of the Liberals' Green Slush Fund.
Yes,
It's got nothing to do on debate. It's just that you've been pretty hard on us for reading something, and I'm pretty sure, I do respect Mr. Stewart, but I'm pretty sure he's reading as well, so we're just to apply the same rules as you have given us to the same.
Sorry, Mr. Duran, that is in terms of when we're debating a motion. And in your time with a witness, you could read for 5 minutes, and it would not. It's your 5 minutes. So members can read, they can cite evidence. There's no problem with that. It's when we're debating a motion that requires members to be. Okay, thank you. You can back up, Mr. Stewart, and I will give you a little more time just to go ahead.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And I would submit that these are my own questions that were prepared, and because of the chronological order, I'm trying to keep it in line. Back to my questioning, but in your testimony to the Public Accounts Committee on October the 9th, you stated that you can't recall asking her to take the position. I'm referring to Ms. Verschieren. So earlier today, in your testimony, you stated it was not uncommon for you to call people to ask them to apply. These are your words, Mr. Bains. So Ms. Verschieren remembers you calling her 2 or 3 times, and Leah Lawrence remembers you calling her at least twice. My question to you today, and I can guarantee you that a proper answer is not as I stated earlier, because this isn't my role, this particular file, so I would like a real answer and a new one on why the President and Annette Verschieren remember as many as 5 phone calls between the two of them, and you remember none. Why is that?
Thank you very much for the question. As I said, the answer to your question is very clear. The Privy Council official highlighted on a number of occasions that Ms. Verschieren did apply. So that is public.
Cut you off there, and the reason I'm cutting you off is because I didn't ask you if she applied. I asked you if you phoned her. Everybody remembers you phoning her except for you yourself. So I'm going to ask you again. Isn't it true that you called Ms. Verschieren and asked her to apply for the position? That's a yes or a no, to be very specific.
No, I've answered that question multiple times, and I'm more than glad to answer that question again. It's not uncommon for me to reach out to a number of people. I don't recall the specific conversation, but as I've indicated, we wanted more, not less people to apply, and they had to go through a vetting process, which was conducted by PCO.
Time's up. Scared you. Any more?
You got time for one more question.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Last question, and quite frankly, it's the same question. Former Minister Bains, everyone in Canada knows you called Annette Verschuren. Why can't you simply admit you did that? You admitted you called other people. Is it because you can't take accountability for this massive corruption of failure? Or you won't take accountability? You've clearly called others. You admitted it. Admit that you called her and admit it's a failure. That's my question. Admit it now while you still can.
You. Mr. Bains, the floor is yours if you'd like to answer.
Okay, so just again, I've answered that question. I'll answer it again, which is all individuals applied for the roles, including Ms. Verschuren.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours, Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Mr. Bains, Mr. Noseworthy was not only in attendance at those board meetings, and his name is on all the minutes. Moreover, he was highly involved in the appointment of Ms. Verschuren. Now, as Ms. Lawrence just explained, Mr. Noseworthy communicated directly with Ms. Lawrence, who was the CEO of STDTC, to tell her that Ms. Verschuren was going to become the new president. Were you aware of this conversation?
Thank you very much for the question, Chair. This is the first time I've heard of such a process taking place.
Est-ce que ça vous semble?
Does it strike you normal that the ADM would communicate with the CEO of SDTC as to who the new chair of the board would be?
Est-ce un processus que vous avez?
Is that a process that you've seen occur during your 5-year tenure as minister previously?
So just to clarify, are you saying that the assistant deputy minister reached out to the current chair to say who the new chair was? I just wanted to clarify. My apologies.
Non, avec la PDG.
No, with the CEO, Ms. Lawrence, the CEO back in the day. They informed the CEO of the day who the new chair would be, and a couple of days later, Ms. Verschuren was already then on the board. That's what Ms. Lawrence said.
So there probably is a process where a governor and council appointment recommendation once passed through cabinet of informing key stakeholders. So I assume letting the CEO would be part of the process. I just don't know the sequence or timing that you're referring to.
C'était des appels dans lesquels Madame.
I'm referring to telephone calls in which Ms. Lawrence indicated that there was a conflict of interest issue. She knew Ms. Verschuren and the potential conflicts of interest that were, in fact, more than just apparent. And she mentioned those to Mr. Noseworthy. And I imagine Mr. Noseworthy never flagged those potential issues with you or with your deputy minister?
As I indicated, when it came to Ms. Verschuren or any of the other candidates that were presented to me, they had to go through a vetting process. So I had enormous confidence in that process in determining who the names would be, and that's how I approached my position on making the GIC recommendation.
Parce que de sérieuses réserves.
Well, serious misgivings were raised by the CEO of SDTC, and you hadn't gotten wind or you had no knowledge of those serious reservations that the CEO had raised it with the ADM. He kept it for himself, apparently, according to you. Have I understood the situation correctly?
What I can say, and that it's on the public record as well, just to make sure we're on the same page, is that when Ms. Verschuren did want to apply, or after she applied, did engage with the Conflict of Interest Commissioner to get guidance on can she proceed. So to your point, if such issues were raised, my understanding is that those issues were addressed in her approach with the commissioner to get clarification on can she pursue this position. And my understanding, based on the testimony that's been presented, that she did get clearance.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Up next, Mr. Cannings, you have the floor for about 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I just want to clarify in my head the whole what we're hearing here today. It seems, Mr. Bains, that what you're saying is that there was no role for you to play in even knowing about a conflict of interest, let alone considering it, which strikes me as odd, but that all those discussions would have taken place from the Deputy Minister on down in your department and within the board themselves. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Chair. To the member, in my opening statement, I mentioned there was over 100 Governor and Council appointments, and those appointments were made through the recommendations that were given by PCO. And so my understanding is that all such issues were looked at through the vetting process, and that ultimately any individual that did go through that process had an obligation to follow the Conflict of Interest Act. So I believe, when you're dealing with such a number of appointments over a period of time, the process needs to be clear in terms of vetting the individuals, and then rules are also clear on how the individual should conduct themselves. And I firmly believe the onus is on the individuals to make sure that they comply with the Act.
Okay, and just getting back to what you might hear as a minister, I can understand that your ministry was one of the more large and perhaps a little complex, but you had a deputy minister who was hearing from people like Mr. Noseworthy about things. SDTC was, I would suggest, a very large and important project under your ministry. It wasn't, some minor thing way down low. This is something that dealt with a lot of money, a lot of important projects that were, it was one of the, I would say, one of the flagship projects of your government in terms of trying to deal with climate challenges that you would be, I would hope, very proud of, that you would hear from your deputy minister on a regular basis as to how all that was going. And here we have an assistant deputy minister sitting in on the board meetings, hearing things that the Auditor General found concerning, and yet your deputy minister never reported to you. I don't know how often you spoke to your deputy minister. I would hope on a daily basis, but you never heard anything regarding these issues from the deputy minister. So to answer the two questions I believe that you have posed, one is the clean tech sector and Sustainable Development Technology Canada and the role that it played in providing capital was important. And again, for the reason I stated before, with another member that asked me about the clean tech sector. And secondly, I did speak with my deputy minister on a regular basis. The issues that you are highlighting were never brought to my attention.
Thank you. That is your time. I gave you a little bit more to make up for your opening. You were short there. And you'll have one other opportunity, Mr. Cannings, as well. There'll be one more round after this. Mr. Nader, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you, Mr. Bains, for joining us here this afternoon. I want to pick up again on the appointment of Ms. Verschaeren as chair of SDTC. Where I'm struggling is that on the one hand, you're saying that this was a new appointments process that the government had put in place, but where I struggle is that the PCO informed this committee that the application for this position for chair was open from September 21st, 2018 until October 12th, 2018, and that 54 people applied, and Annette Verschaeren was not one of those people. But then we find out from testimony from Ms. Verschaeren that, and I'm going to quote her testimony, I was requested to consider being an applicant. So then the application period reopened, and Ms. Verschaeren applied after being requested to apply on April 30th, 2019, 6 months after the original application period had been open. Did you request that that application period be extended?
Chair, thank you for that question. Pertaining to the number of PCO advice letters that I received, I believe it wasn't uncommon to get multiple letters and multiple recommendations for positions that were people applied to. And in this particular instance, that was the case.
So you're telling me that those 54 applicants, not one of them had a clean record with no conflicts of interest that could have been appointed and avoided all this mess had you accepted one of those 54 appointments? None of those 54 were qualified?
No, what I'm saying is that sometimes you receive multiple letters and you take a look at it holistically. My understanding, according to the PCO official, was that 54 people applied, and I believe 47 applied after that. So it's great to see more, not less people apply. That means there's more names in the system, and I believe there was, according to the PCO official, 3 candidates that were also interviewed. And so the point I'm making is that it's not uncommon to have multiple rounds, multiple vettings, and multiple names.
Well, I'm just going to stop you there. But all else being equal, would you at least agree that it would have been preferable to have named someone who didn't have conflict of interest? Would it not have been preferable to accept one of those other nearly 100 applicants had they not had a conflict of interest? Would you at least agree with that?
So 2 points, Chair, to the member. One is that positions are open until it's filled. And so names keep on coming through the system until an announcement's made. Secondly, when the announcement from Ms. Verschuren was made, it was well received. It was something that I know that was public. People understood the work that Ms. Verschuren had done for the previous Conservative government, her reputation as a business leader. And
okay,
so what I'm getting at is that it was all public.
Okay, again, I want to get back to the point, though. With the benefit of hindsight, at least, would you agree that it would have been preferable not to have nominated Ms. Verschuren, but have instead nominated someone who didn't have conflict of interest? At least with the benefit of hindsight, would you at least agree with that point?
Respectfully, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think the core issue here is people following the Conflict of Interest Act and holding themselves to the obligations under the Act. With regards to Ms. Verschuren's credentials, they were impeccable. She was highly regarded both in the public and private sector.
Okay, you mentioned in response that that's a similar question or similar point in a previous response. You said the onus is on the individual to follow the rules. But is there not a similar onus on you as the minister responsible under the Canada Foundation for Sustainable Development Technology Act? Is there not an onus on you as well to ensure that people are put into those positions who don't have conflicts of interest? Is there not also an onus on you to make sure that you're not putting people in who have clear conflict of interest and are aware of those conflicts of interest when you are making the appointments?
So there's a few components to that. One is the responsibility of the ministers to appoint 7 of the 15 people through the new appointments process, which vets these individuals. That was done. Secondly, it's important to note that the individuals have the credentials that meet the requirements. And in this particular case, Ms. Verschuren had the qualifications, and more importantly, her reputation as a businesswoman, as a business leader, was well known.
Very short, Mr. Nader.
So I just want to see, could you at least agree that appointing someone without conflict of interest who would not be in a position to fund their own businesses, would you at least admit, with the benefit of hindsight, that that would have been preferable?
The preference is for people to respect and follow the Conflict of Interest Act. I think that's the takeaway.
Thank you very much.